Morning, folks. Sorry I'm not here today. I'm on a field trip checking out how soap is made. It's pretty cool. Anyway, today we're going to focus on how urban sprawl can be dealt with so that cities can be more sustainable. We've talked about this year some of the challenges from urban sprawl. There's a lot. Just off the top of my head, we know that at least in the Chicago area, and in many other areas in this country, but certainly the Chicago area, as Chicago has spread out, that has been at the cost of great farmland, really great farmland, even right here in Wilmette, where we are. This used to be farmland in the 1950s. So we lose a lot of valuable land for growing food, but we also end up creating more pollution because now people are living farther from where they work, so they're driving more. So how can we make cities more sustainable? There are other issues with urban sprawl, but remember also that when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about two things. We want to make sure that something can sustain itself. In other words, like if we're talking about sustainability for people, we would hope that the things we build would, or create, would help people improve themselves. They wouldn't become dependent on this thing. They would instead be able to grow from it. And secondly, sustainability refers to helping the environment. So sustainability can be helping people help themselves or helping the environment. So we'll talk about both of those things today, and a lot of the answer to how we can improve the effects or mitigate the effects of urban sprawl have to do with this idea of new urbanism. Finally, I'll say that there are a couple video links, very short videos. One's about 6 minutes, one's about 30 seconds. And it'll give you a better idea of how some of these ideas are playing out in cities across the country today, but especially generally in the developed world. Cities that are sort of revamping themselves have to spend a lot of money to do that. Not always, but generally they're having to rebuild things, and obviously cities in the developing world may not have that money. So at least in the developed world, we see a lot of really cool changes to cities. Let's get started. So hopefully we know by now that urban sprawl is this idea of cities spreading out. And one particular term for this is what's called leapfrogging. Leapfrogging is more specifically just the process of creating exurbs. So we know what it means to leapfrog. You know, you're jumping over somebody else. In this case, leapfrogging then is referring to developers jumping over themselves, farther and farther from the city to more and more open land in order to continue growing their own business. Of course, by doing this, if you're a housing developer, you're also growing the city. So we tend to see cities get bigger. It's not often that they get smaller. And this growth of the exurbs is sometimes referred to as leapfrogging. As cities grow, another major effect of that is that they end up absorbing more heat. This is what's called the urban heat island effect. Makes sense, at least when you know what it means. The terms hopefully match up with that. Urban means city, heat means hot, and island effect means they're like kind of an island on themselves, right? So why is it that cities get so hot? Well, you may know that it has to do with all the heat absorbing surfaces that are built in a city. The built environment in a city absorbs a lot of heat. So for example, obviously when a city expands, you got to build more roads. So roads are often built with an asphalt, that black surface you see on top, and you probably know that darker colors absorb more heat. So your road, the more road surfaces you have, the more heat sort of like bounces, or I should say, radiates off of them. Probably feel this on a hot summer day if you're ever hanging out by the pavement. I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, our playground had what we called the blacktop. Maybe you had the same thing, but it was just a giant slab of asphalt. And kids would play on that, but also you knew that it got pretty hot in the summertime, or at least when the sun was out. So other things, of course, that we build can absorb heat. Buildings, of course, are mostly what we build, or a lot of what we build. And while you probably haven't seen a lot of building roofs, often they are covered in a black substance, tar. This is to make them rainproof. So, of course, that also has a tendency to absorb heat, and that all just makes living in a city much hotter. So does concrete. Concrete could be used for roads or for buildings, and that can also absorb heat. So what this looks like on a chart, sort of, is this here on the bottom. So you can see, of course, we have a city here, then we have a suburban area, then a rural area, or in this case, a city, a park, and then a suburban area. And you can see the temperature tends to be, if we look over here at the y-axis, about maybe 5 degrees hotter in the most urban areas than in the surrounding rural areas. 5 degrees may not sound like much, but when scientists are concerned about global warming and they're saying, if we see a 1% increase in global temperatures, that may mean I'm going to make up a number, a 10-foot rise in sea levels. That's a pretty serious issue. So 5 degrees hotter in larger and larger urban areas makes for a pretty significant global challenge. And I think it's pretty understandable as well. So maybe we'll see some ways that we can mitigate this today, but generally it's going to have to do with making cities more walkable. That's part of it, and making them more desirable for people. They're actually more efficient than rural and suburban areas, so it's not really about reducing cities so much as it is about reducing their sprawl. All right, so let's check out the main topic for today, which is what's sometimes called smart growth. Smart growth, I guess, is kind of what it sounds like. It's making sure that you're not just building something without thinking too much about it. You're trying to build something in a way that is more useful, more sustainable. You might have in your home a smart TV. It's a TV that's connected to technology. It's more useful for you. You could possibly access Netflix or the internet on that TV. So in that same way, you're hoping to build a city in a way that makes it better for the people there and the environment. One example of that, it's not really common here in the United States, but is common in Europe, especially, at least as far as I know, in England. A lot of cities have what are called green belts. This is just a huge area, a large area where green space exists. And we know, of course, we probably don't associate cities with parks. You may find a lot of parks in Chicago, but that's not the norm. It's certainly nice when you can find one, because you're often in a city surrounded by such noise and pollution that if you can just go relax in a park, it can be a really rejuvenating experience. Here's an example of this in Chicago, actually. This is a drawing from a plan that was made for Chicago. Sounds silly, but if any of you are thinking about being urban planners, it's not an unusual career these days to figure out how to plan cities. You'd probably be helping create smart growth ideas. But what I was going to say is that being a city planner is a relatively new job. And one of its first major trends was in the 1800s when this drawing was built. In the late 1800s, there was a movement across America in a lot of cities and among city planners of what was called the City Beautiful movement. The idea was that cities by the late 1800s had become congested, polluted, and really people needed a break from all this stuff. So how could we do this? Well, a lot of the City Beautiful movement focused on creating parks. Well, here in Chicago, we had one of the greatest urban planners the United States has had. His name was Daniel Burnham, and it just so happens that the video you will watch, one of the videos you'll watch, mentions him at the start. Daniel Burnham was a fantastic architect, but he also was a great urban planner. So here what you have is Chicago, so you can probably guess the downtown part is here in this dark red area. And then this is sort of like the border of Chicago. But you can also see like city streets out here. So Chicago was, I guess, growing, or this was planned growth, I should say. So here's the lakefront, and north is to the right. And what is proof of a green belt here are these really thin green lines. If you wanted to see this for yourself when the video is done, check out, just Google Logan Square and go to the Google map, the reference map, where you see, roads, parks, building names, borders, all that stuff. And let's say Logan Square is right around here, roughly. what you'll see is that there is a park there, but you'll also see this like really thin line of parks, like sort of goes between the streets. It's called a boulevard. So Chicago is what's called a boulevard system, where a lot of our, I shouldn't say a lot, some of our roads have this nice thick strip of green in the middle. Now you may think, well, why would I want to play in the middle of a street, like between streets? That's not very easy to get to. I guess you'd be right, but it's better than no place, and it's actually quite wide. I'd say it's maybe about, some places, 30, 40 yards. So if you go to Google Maps, heck, maybe I'd say pause it and check right now. I'd do it and show you, but then it ends this recording. So maybe pause the video and go to Google Maps, Google Logan Square, and then follow this green line that takes you from Logan Square. It'll take you all through a whole bunch of other parks, to other thin lines, to other parks, to other thin lines, to other parks, and just see how far you traveled. And it's a windy line, but I'd say you're probably going about 10 miles or so. So this was part of Daniel Burnham's plan for Chicago to make it more sustainable. Eventually, a lot of his plans were just so big we never could have built them all. So like this outer ring we never got. But go check it out in Logan Square if you haven't done that. I'd say pause it now and go look. I'll continue then just talking about a couple final things. Urban infill, very straightforward term. I don't think I put this as one of your vocab terms, but it's kind of what it sounds like, to fill in something. I think we know what that means. So urban infill is just reusing space or redeveloping space rather than tearing it down or having to build something brand new. When you tear something else down, you've created a lot of waste, and when you want to rebuild something, or I should say build something new, you've used a lot of energy to get those materials to that site and to create the materials. So as much as can be done in a sort of cost-effective way, urban infill is very useful for sustainability. So here's just a quick drawing or example. So we've got two sites here, the red site and the purple site, and you can see one of them says Site 1, and here it looks like this is an empty space, but this could be space that could be used for a new building. So could this building, whether it's the one that's already constructed or this parking lot. So you could either build on top of this existing building if you needed more space, or build in an empty space. Rather than expand further outwards and create more suburbs or exurbs, it would be better to build where you've already got lots of space. You've got practically everything you need here, and the more this is done, the less urban sprawl we have. Here's a picture of how this could be done. This is a real example, I forget where, but you've got this old storefront building, hardware store on the bottom, looks like it might be a residence on top, but you can see above this older building there's like a brand new feature of what's probably a residence. This is how a lot of cities used to be and still are. If you go to around Chicago, you'll see a lot of the major housing on busy streets like this one you see is on top of stores. So you got 2- or 3-story buildings, and the first floor is stores, second and third floor are often residences. All right, last thing we'll talk about then is this idea of new urbanism. So new urbanism, if I were to give you a one-word, 2-word definition, because that's very long, but you can see part of that is multiple terms for the same term, whether we're talking about new urbanism or mixed-use development or transit-oriented development. A 2-word definition of this is walkable cities. Cities are great in a lot of ways, but for a lot of people, especially in Chicago, we have a lot of traffic and driving around, and we also have a decent subway system, public transit system with buses and trains, but for a lot of people it's not that walkable. It would be nice if we had the ability to make our neighborhoods more tightly packed or more intelligently planned, so that people wouldn't have to go quite so far to get the things they need, and ideally could do a lot of that through walking. So we'll look at how this is done, but generally keep in mind new urbanism has to do with walkability. So here's an example that I showed you earlier this year. You have in front of you a picture from Allentown, Pennsylvania. You might remember we talked about that town when we talked about the Rust Belt and industries moving overseas, offshoring. So this is a plan for an area where there was once a steel plant in Allentown, Pennsylvania, And the plan here involves tons of different types of buildings. So you can follow the key on your own here, but you've got parking structures in green. You've got a nice riverwalk, so that's nice for tertiary sector employees or people living in an area. You've got residential buildings, and along the riverfront here, you've got commercial buildings. So wouldn't it be nice if you could live here, work here? You could have lunch along the Riverwalk. This is some of what Chicago has done. We have a lot of new residential buildings built along the river. We've improved our Riverwalk. A lot of people on their lunch hour just go out, hang out, watch things go by on the river. It's a great place to relax, get out of the office, get some sun, walk a little bit. But really the main effect of this planning is that you have people living near where they work instead of driving or commuting a long way. Tons of other things are involved in new urbanism, though. I'll just give you a few other examples. This is what's called a complete street. I forget what city was planning this, but they were going to improve all their streets in this way. Some of these ideas seem really simple, and they are, but I think if they were done everywhere, a city would have much nicer streets. So here's I'll go left to right, and you can read along with me. They want to build what are called active sidewalks. Now, you've probably been some places where there are no sidewalks, and that's not convenient at all. So if you were to build any sidewalk, that would be better. But what would make a sidewalk even better would be if you had like a transition from the sidewalk to the street. In other words, not a curb that just ends and then it drops down and gets to the street. That would make it easier, of course, if you had a transition to be used for people with wheelchairs or older people with walkers, perhaps. So active sidewalks would just be more walkable for people. Bike lane, I think you understand what that is, hopefully off to the side of where the cars are and maybe even separated. Chicago's done some of this. We have like 3 different types of bike lanes in Chicago. One is where they've just painted something on the street that says this is the bike lane. You know, it's hopefully going to be visible to car drivers, but you're still pretty vulnerable as a bike bicyclist. But there are also versions of it where we've had like little plastic things sticking up every 10 feet or so. That makes it more protected. And then there's some where we've actually added a separate lane itself, separated by like a concrete curb on both sides. So cars and bicyclists are not even sharing the same actual piece of road. So this, of course, would include, bike lane would improve the amount of exercise you get instead of driving. That reduces pollution as well, and can even be fast. It would be healthier, but can even be pretty fast. When I work downtown in the summertime as a tour guide, I have 2 options to get downtown. I could take a bus or I could ride my bike. I suppose I could also take the L or drive, but I take a bike almost every single day unless it's raining because I get there faster, and it's healthy. A roadway that's an active roadway we don't really need to bore ourselves with, but there's ways to build roadways so that you don't have people turning in the middle of the roadway. That makes it more likely people are going to have to stop or get in an accident to wait for somebody who's turning. Safer crosswalk simply just means that you've labeled the crosswalk. There could be more advanced versions of it, but having a clearly labeled crosswalk is better, of course, for safer crossing. This one I thought was quite interesting, a planting strip. So here you can see plants off to the side of the roadway, like a tree here. Studies have shown that if you have trees and landscaping off to the side of the road, it slows traffic down. People tend to drive more slowly. It also makes the roads a little bit more attractive, provides some shade, and may help reduce some of those effects of the urban heat island effect. Finally, you got some green spaces here. Everyone likes green spaces. I don't think I need to tell you too much about why green spaces are valuable. It's a nice place where you can relax, get some exercise, get some relief from the busy city neighborhood. Last couple examples I think are pretty cool, way more effective maybe than a complete street, but hopefully you're starting to understand how cities can be more walkable for people, whether it's, I suppose, walking or creating bike lanes. You basically want to get people to go places under their own power instead of by using cars. Some of this could include improving public transit, but if you think about like the Glen in Glenview, we've talked about the Glen before. The Glen has multiple types of housing. It's got single family homes, it's got townhomes, and it's got, I think, some apartment buildings. I could be wrong about that. But nearby all of the parts of the Glen, you've got a school, you've got a big park, you've got some office buildings, you've got grocery stores. It's possibly a bit far for some people to walk, but the various types of housing, as well as access to transit like a train station, the Glenview train station is pretty close to the Glen. You've got all sorts of ways to get to and from the Glen to downtown using public transit. That makes an area more efficient, but also a lot of people might just work in the area and walk to and from work. I don't think people do, because people in Glenview are rich and want to drive their Teslas, but that's a whole other issue. So here's two last examples of how cities can be more walkable, or sustainable, I should say. Carmel, Indiana, is a nice suburb, northern suburb of Indianapolis, has been spending, well, you can see here, since the late 1990s, so about 20 years, been building all these roundabouts. Roundabouts are very popular in Europe. We don't have roundabouts here in the United States because, well, we're morons, I think. Instead, at every intersection, you have a stop sign or a stoplight. It's very annoying when you have to drive and you've got to stop, especially when there's no one around to stop for. So Europeans get around this by having roundabouts. They literally get around it. So I'll tell you that when I was in England this past summer driving around, it was the first time I was really driving on roundabouts. It was awesome. I would be going on both busy roads and small roads. So roads where you'd be going 45 miles an hour and you'd have a roundabout. It's a pretty big roundabout, so you could still go fast without, reeling out of control. But you simply made it work. You merge with other cars just like you merge onto the highway. Nobody really slows down when people merge on a highway. You just find a space in between cars. It works out pretty well. Any roundabouts we have in the U.S., at least around here, are often done incorrectly. There's one on Gulf Road, which is very annoying for me every time I go in it. It would be a beautiful roundabout and save tons of traffic and time if they didn't have stop signs at the start of every entrance to the roundabout. You're not supposed to stop. You just keep going and you find a space between the cars. People make way. So Carmel has been doing this the right way. They have created over 100 roundabouts, you can see, and this is more than any other city in the U.S., and they're doing this because it has improved safety. They are more compatible with the environment because you're not wasting gas with cars starting and stopping, waiting there for a light to change, stepping on the gas to get going again. You could say they're more attractive. They allow for green space in the middle of an intersection. This one that they have a picture of is unusual because it's like over a highway, but that's a different style. They are also safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. And you can see here they've got some data. In Carmel, where they've changed intersections to roundabouts, they've reduced the number of injury accidents by 80%, the number of accidents overall by 40%. So roundabouts are way better. Maybe at one point we'll do that here, but it requires a lot of time and money. And we will not understand how to drive through them because we're morons. Finally, one really cool idea might be to change how our roads are built. This video that you'll see 30 seconds of shows you something pretty neat. I've just taken a screenshot of it. It's water flowing through a surface. So one major issue with urban sprawl has to do with flooding. In Chicago, for example, when it rains any more than about 2/3 of an inch, our sewers cannot hold all the rainwater because our sewers are also home to sewage, so human waste. So it all gets combined. This is pretty normal. Chicago has what's called a combined sewer system. So when it rains about 2/3 of an inch, then our sewers are full of rainwater combined with sewage. So if it rains any more than that, where does all of it go? The short answer is it overflows into various places. So it might overflow into the river. This happens frequently in Chicago. That's where our sewers have been directed if we have too much rain. Rarely it overflows into the lake, depending on what suburb you're in, which is pretty disgusting considering that the lake is where we get all our water from, drinking water from. More often you might experience, especially if you have a basement, that your basement might flood. So if we could find a way for our rain to be absorbed more instead of running into a sewer, then that would be a great solution. That would solve all sorts of problems in urban areas. The problem with our roadways is that surfaces like asphalt and concrete are not permeable. Water doesn't flow through them into the groundwater. Instead, runs off into these sewers. Well, as you'll see in the short video, and as you can see in this screenshot, there are surfaces that have been engineered to allow water to pass through them. So that could be a great way to make our cities of the future more sustainable. So check out some of those videos, those two videos if you haven't yet. And the rest of the period, you're going to look at trying to draw. You're going to try to draw your own new urbanistic neighborhood. You'll see pretty clear instructions on the box. Do your best to use a pencil. Try and incorporate some of the ideas we've seen here today. You'll see the instructions are pretty clear on the worksheet, but you're going to want to include things like bike lanes on roads. Think about little things like where would you put your tallest buildings, your residential buildings. You're going to have 3 types of residential buildings: single-family homes, townhomes, apartment buildings. Where would you put those? Would they be closest to the town center or farthest from the town center? Where would or how would you draw your streets? Would your streets be better off being very straight, intersecting each other at 90-degree angles, or would you rather have them be wavy for some reason, sort of curvy just a tiny bit? Which would you prefer if you were living in a neighborhood? And maybe if you have the smarts, see if you can draw some roundabouts in there. So check out the videos. Good luck on the worksheet. It's mostly just so you can activate a different part of your brain and hopefully remember more of the aspects of new urbanism. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.